2016 was a big year for Pokemon. We had the release of Pokemon Go, which gave us such memorable cultural references as
But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
the franchise celebrated its 20th birthday and was legally old enough to drink in Japan. Gen 1 was brought into the modern era as you could replay Red, Blue, and Yellow on the 3DS. But most importantly to this video, we got the release of Pokemon Sun and Moon. Pokemon was finally coming back to the US, bringing us to sunny islands inspired by Hawaii. Hi there, if we've never met before, my name's Vanilla, and if we have met before, welcome back. Since you have eyes and clicked on this video and presumably saw the opening, you already know we're going to be talking about Pokemon Sun and Moon. If you haven't been here before and haven't seen any of my amazing content, you won't have any idea what kind of content I make and what my style is, so you may already have some preconceptions of what this video is going to be like. Maybe you're here for nostalgia or to hear someone talk bad about modern Pokemon. You might see 2016 in the title and you go, ah yes, the good old days. I don't really experience the feeling of nostalgia, that's just not how my mind works. That means that I won't be talking about, is this game as good as it used to be? Or this reminds me of all the good times I had growing up. I also want to say that I'm not a believer in Gen 7 or the last good Pokemon games, which a quick glance at my channel would show you that. So I'm not going to be reflecting on how the games have gotten worse over time. I just want to look at the games and other media surrounding the game and yap about that for a while. So if that sounds interesting to you, then stick around and maybe subscribe and drop a like. When I'm deciding how I want to go about yapping on one of these videos, I like to peruse the selection of other videos that are already available on this wonderful platform of YouTube. Honestly, I was very stunned at how many hours-long videos there are that talk about Sun and Moon. I could never, whether it's my ADHD or just general preference, my brain does not work like that. I feel like I would need to repeat myself so many times to fill a video of that length. I was always that kid in class that could never meet the page requirements for papers. These types of videos tend to share similar structures between them. They go through the story in depth, discuss each plot development, and then look at the themes of the game, conduct meta-analyses, all while interspersing it with their past and present experiences. Some even talk about the games in the greater context of Pokemon. Now, don't get me wrong, a ton of effort goes into these kinds of videos, and that's great for folks who enjoy that kind of deep dive content, but if you're more like me, we don't really get the luxury of taking a look at a game like Pokemon Sun and Moon without needing to look at it in some sort of meta context. Let me just put this up real quick. It's a warning. This is a warning because, like everything I share, it's my opinion, but I personally don't experience Pokemon in this way. What does that even mean, Vanilla, you may be asking? Meta-analyses for me, and I suspect many others too, take away from the enjoyment of Pokemon. I don't see the point in dissecting and contemplating the potential greater philosophical meaning behind the story, nor do I see the point in delving into dark psychological themes surrounding Lusamine being an absent parent. I understand why people might enjoy this type of analysis, but for me, it takes away from the experience. I don't know, maybe I'm simple, but I enjoy Pokemon because I can experience the games as they are presented without needing to dissect them. Many of the comments on these analysis videos applaud the creators for having media literacy since they're going into great detail about these kinds of subjects. While I think it takes a lot of skill to synthesize information this way, I also feel that it almost takes away from the way the stories were designed. It feels kind of sterile in an academic way. On paper, yeah, the things these videos discuss are technically true, but doesn't equating Lusamine and Lily's relationship to severe emotional abuse kind of take away from someone who might truly experience a traumatic, abusive, and neglectful childhood in real life? Again, that's just my opinion, so don't let me take away from your enjoyment if that's your thing. I just want to be extra clear that I don't mean there's anything wrong with looking at things from different perspectives, especially since that's exactly what I'm doing here, but I think it's worth looking at what Sun and Moon are from a bit less of a serious angle. Whenever someone asks me what region is my favorite, I say Alola hands down, but if I ask myself why, the answer that comes to mind is I like the vibe, but that's not really an answer, is it? What I think it comes down to is I just love the world design, and that's probably the best part about Sun and Moon in my opinion. It's bright and upbeat, and that's just something that I'm absolutely obsessed with. Serotonin gets pumped through my brain at about 1,000,000 miles an hour just existing in Alola. The designs of the important story characters as well as the amazing designs of all the new Pokemon are probably what sealed the deal for me. They really captured the essence of Hawaii and the tropical island vibes, and I just can't get enough of it. And I really came to this conclusion while I was looking through some of the media that I've purchased over the years. When I was scrolling through Mercari Japan, I came across this magazine series called Pokemon Fan, which is made for children, but I also find a lot of enjoyment while looking through these, so I suppose it's made for children plus vanilla. There were a few that were themed around Sun and Moon, and I don't really know how I'm going to show you these, but this is an example of what the covers look like. A while ago, I made a video about the beta version of Gold and Silver, and a lot of real-life photos I looked at for magazines had like fingers and stuff from folks holding down the pages. How naive I was, thinking, I can't even find pictures of things without fingers in the corners. I take all that back. I had to work to take photos of these pages. A scanner would have been a lifesaver, but my printer that was advertised by Shaq is on life support and refuses to interact with the outside world most of the time, especially when I need it most. So instead I use this fat belly bolt eraser to try to weigh down the corners. You see Ash a lot on these covers, and obviously this is the new anime style when they moved away from the more traditional one. I am not a Pokemon anime expert. I've watched my fair share, but it's definitely not to the same level of some folks, and I didn't realize there were such strong feelings surrounding the design of Ash until I was lurking around in some old posts on Reddit. Obviously with Horizons, Ash is gone and Liko and Roy are here, which is a totally different issue I'm not even gonna get into because this isn't the video for all that, but I personally really enjoyed the Sun and Moon anime. I like the pacing and I thought it was just a really fun watch. I think that Sun and Moon was a shift to try to capture a bit more of a younger audience, and the anime style really kind of makes me think that's the case. It was a bit less traditional, like I said before, and it's a bit more cartoonish and rounded. Even in Western media, bright and saturated colors with rounded designs indicate something that's made for a bit more of a light-hearted audience. I think this art style definitely communicates that Alola is bright, sunny, and happier than the sharp edges of the previous anime. It's giving happy, and like I said earlier, that's my favorite part of Alola. I haven't talked about it much at this point because I quite enjoy most other aspects of the game over it, but I suppose I'll touch on the plot of Sun and Moon briefly. Since the Alola region lacks traditional gyms, you take on the island trials, trial captains, and challenge the kahunas to become the strongest trainer in Alola, which is a pretty familiar concept to us Pokemon trainers. The trial captains and kahunas are like your gym leaders, and the island challenges are similar to the puzzles you would find in most gyms, except that I think the island challenges are much more creative than gym puzzles. My favorite was Kiawe's trial, where you had to find the differences in the photos taken. While the solution may be simple to most, it's a breath of fresh air compared to ice puzzles, teleporters, and mazes of most other gyms. In Malo's trial, you have to use Stoutland to find ingredients for the dish Malo wants to make. It really makes you feel like you're doing something and leaves you feeling accomplished afterwards. As the game starts, we're introduced to the deity of Melee Island, Tapu Koko, when we cross a perilous bridge to save Professor Kukui's assistant Lily and her Pokemon, which she calls Nebby. Throughout our adventure, Lily follows along as she wants to help Nebby get back to where it came from. Nebby's a Pokemon called Cosmog, and Team Skull are out to capture it. Team Skull is this region's ragtag group of ruffians, and their goal is to be bad, I guess. Like, they don't really do much except vandalize and steal Pokemon. Eventually, Nebby is stolen when Lily is confronted while alone at the Aether House. Eventually, we find out that it's not even Team Skull that wants Nebby, but rather Aether's president, Lusamine, who also happens to be Lily's mother. Lusamine, while appearing to be a kind woman on the surface, quickly devolves into someone who is the exact opposite. When a portal into Ultra Space was opened and Lusamine encountered Ultra Beasts, she became obsessed with them. After this incident, she no longer cared about anything else other than Ultra Beasts. This meant that she neglected her own children, Lily and Gladion. Gladion also happened to be like a temporary member of Team Skull and did like hired work for them, but after they kidnapped Nebby and endangered his sister, he changed sides. Lusamine uses Cosmog to enter Ultra Space along with Team Skull's leader Guzma. In order to get into Ultra Space to rescue Lusamine, Cosmog, who has transferred into Cosmoem, needs to be awakened using the Sun Flute and Moon Flute. Once awakened, Cosmoem evolves into either Solgaleo or Lunala, depending on your game version, and it opens a portal into Ultra Space. There we encounter Lusamine, who gets absorbed by Nihilego and challenges us to a fight. Can I also just say how creepy this thing is? Its official name is even Mother Beast Lusamine, which again is just like really disturbing. Once she's freed from Nihilego, we find that she's been put into a coma and then transported along with us out of Ultra Space. Then she's taken away on the back of a Mudsdale to be looked after. Then it's back to business as usual, where we have to become the champion. It's special in Alola though, because this is the first time anyone has been able to challenge the league since there wasn't one before. And I think that just about highlights all the important things you need to remember. I think a lot of the stuff I was reading spent way too much time on how Lusamine neglected her kids. Obviously, it impacted Lily and Gladion deeply, and it makes sense why, but Lily's entire development involves her realizing that she's her own person and that she exists independently of what her mother thinks about her. And I think that should be the main focus. Her growth into someone who thinks highly of herself and sees her own self-worth. Gladion and Lily's character development shouldn't be minimized to the chronic mistreatment they endured. It should be about how they overcame it and become great people and trainers. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. Instead, I want to go over some of the features and mechanics of the games I really enjoyed. The trial captains and island kahunas each have distinct styles, and they definitely match the theme of their teams and trials. I feel like since we have quests we have to complete for the captains, that we get to establish a bit more of a connection with each of them. Even if they don't play a super big role in the story, I can still clearly recall each trial captain and their personalities. My favorite trial captain is probably Kiawe. I just think he's really cool. He specializes in fire dancing, which I just think is super entertaining. He also plays a pretty big role in the Sun and Moon arc of the Pokemon Adventures manga, manga, which I did end up picking up. In the manga, Kiawe works closely with the main character's son, so we do get to see a bit more of him there. He's working his part-time job at the thrifty Megamart because he wants to travel abroad and go to school to study dance. The game even makes mention of this in a side quest where we can see he was just fired from said Megamart. As for which Kahuna is my favorite, I think my opinion has shifted a bit since playing through the games again. I used to think that Hala was my favorite because he was a grandpa who didn't back down from a challenge, and I still really like him, but honestly, Nanu grew on me a lot. The sly, apathetic Kahuna who says he doesn't want to even be a Kahuna. He pretends he doesn't care, but he still follows us as we're about to leave Ula Ula and surprisingly challenges us to a battle. So he actually does care, but just doesn't want to show it. Then you have the post game where you learn his role with the international police. The concept of a laid-back, indifferent police officer is a trope you don't see very often, but I really liked it. I think I would also be missing out if I didn't say who my favorite professor of all time was, and it's Professor Kukui. I love his energy and it definitely matches Alola. I love how his research revolves around studying Pokemon moves. I wouldn't have even thought that would be something a professor might want to study, but it makes a lot of sense. He's also secretly, but not so secretly, the masked royal in the battle royale. I just feel like they really made him involved with the region as opposed to some other professors that unfortunately seem to take a back seat and only act as a springboard for the player character to begin their adventure. Speaking of Pokemon moves, that's a huge thing in Alola with the introduction of Z moves, which are these really over-the-top moves that are activated using Z crystals. Usually these crystals are acquired after completing trials and sometimes grand trials. While I think the moves look really cool and they're definitely unique, I don't think I used them once during my playthrough, which is honestly kind of sad. Most of the time I end up using region-specific mechanics without really realizing it in other games like Terrestrialization in Paldea or plus moves in Kalos, but I guess since you have to take up a held item slot with the Z crystal, I think that's probably what kept me from wanting to use them. It's kind of a shame, honestly, because I think the concept is really fascinating. Okay, tangent time. Speaking of Z crystals, while I was flipping through the Pokemon fan magazines to get to the comics in the back, I was seeing a lot of advertisements for what looked like an arcade game. Fun fact about Vanilla Time, I love arcades. I love both old and new arcade games, which makes a lot of sense since I just like playing games in general. But this machine was called Gaole. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Gaole. There's an accent there. I don't know. That feels wrong. Maybe it's because mainstream arcade culture is pretty much dead, but games like Gaole and its newer counterpart Mizastar haven't been imported into North America. I haven't seen anything indicating that they've been released in either Canada or the United States, which is a shame because they look like so much fun. But the reason why I bring this up is because apparently there was this Z ring that you could actually use on the Gaole machine. Like you could even get Z crystals to put into your wristband and then you could use them on the machine. How cool is that concept? I guess Mizastar also has the same kind of mechanic but with a Terra Orb. The resale is disgusting though, so I don't think I'll ever be getting a hold of one of those. Unironically, I might have made the Z ring a part of my day-to-day wardrobe, so maybe it's better I don't have it. Okay, tangent aside, I think the Z moves look really cool in game, and it makes me happy that Sun and Moon is 3D. I don't think they would have been able to capture the absolute ridiculousness of some of the moves without the 3D environment. I love that Pokemon is now a 3D franchise, a phrase that makes me check out my window whenever I say it. I'm afraid one day an angry mob will show up if I say it too loud, but I personally think they look amazing, and the fact that they're 3D makes them even more real to me. That's really obvious in Gen 7 because you have the implementation of Pokemon Refresh, which is probably one of my favorite features in a Pokemon game ever. It's a feature that allows you to interact with your Pokemon outside of battle. I miss it in the newer generations. I am dying for that feature in Scarlet and Violet. Like to be able to pet my Pokemon, and each of them have spots they like to be pet and spots that they don't. And I love increasing my friendship with my Pokemon by feeding them Pokebeans and petting them. I do wish we could turn the beans into something like maybe a smoothie instead of just beans on their own. I think they're like jelly beans, but I feel kind of bad feeding them colored fava beans. Although I imagine the rainbow ones taste like the most amazing thing you've ever eaten ever. I like how after battle you have the option to care for the Pokemon if certain conditions are met. Like if they have a status condition, you can give them medicine. If they're wet, you can dry them off. Or if they're sandy, you can wipe it away. I want it so bad in the newer games. Imagine the types of animations they can have now and how great it would look in the new game engine. Another feature I'm a really big fan of is the Pokepelago system. I really like the islands that you can develop. I think they're really useful in so many different ways. You have Isle of Beans where you can shake those beanstalk and Pokebeans will fall. Also, new Pokemon will sometimes wander onto the island and they may tame themselves. Then there's Isle of Fun. a boon, where your Pokemon can go spelunking and find different things from evolution stones to valuable items like big pearls and star pieces. And then there's Isle Level Up, where you can set your Pokemon to train specific EVs and their level. I think that the islands are all really useful, even though I didn't use Island of Plenty. I can see how being able to grow berries would be super helpful. I personally liked Isle Level Up the most since I could set my Pokemon to gain EVs while I was away, and in a matter of hours they would be fully trained if the berry bin was filled up. I can see it being a good way to save money on vitamins, especially before the money system was reworked in newer generations. I was thinking about whether or not I should mention this, and I think I will. When I was watching some other creators' content about Sun and Moon, I saw folks arguing about the ethics of keeping Pokemon in Poképelago. I really don't think it's that deep, which is kind of the same concept of Pokemon being kept in their Pokéballs. Poképelago is more or less a resort for Pokemon. I think the Japanese name is literally Pokemon Resort. It's a resort where they're well fed and get to spend time with other Pokemon doing fun tasks. The Pokemon that are in the different areas change, especially if you have a lot of them, so conceptually they get to go where they would like. Just because they're doing tasks doesn't mean they're being held against their will, which would be detrimental to their psyche. It's not some evil place, and we're not evil because we're collecting Pokemon. It's a resort. But what if you couldn't escape the resort and they took away your ability to leave? The choice is no longer yours. It's just looking too far into something that's not that deep in my opinion. Anyway, one of the other features introduced in Sun and Moon is the Ride Pager, which is really engaging. It's a feature that replaces all HMs and other useful items like the item finder with Pokemon mounts. At first, you only have access to Tauros, who you get to befriend at the beginning of the game. Tauros charges through large chunks of rock, and it's really satisfying. There's a similar mechanic with Sharpedo, just on the water, although it's a lot harder to control, which if you're looking at Sharpedo, it does look like a Pokemon that wants to go really fast. My favorite Pokemon to call is Stoutland, probably because it's a huge fluffy dog, but it's pretty much as fast as Tauros' base speed, and Tauros is hard to control when it's charging anyway. Plus, with Stoutland, you can search for hidden items, which means free items and money. The only thing I don't like about the pager is the outfit that I'm forced to wear. It's not very good. I'm sorry. I get we need to be protected, safety first and all that, especially when we're ramming into rocks, but surely we could have come up with a better design. Maybe it's just the helmet, but man, I think it would have been cool to have some more customization options for the pager outfit, even if it was just different colors. Elsewhere in the game, there were a lot of customization options, and that's another one of my favorite things about the games, but none for the pager. Please let me pick a different helmet. Maybe some glasses, there's no eye protection, a clear visor on the helmet. Literally anything to protect me from the shards of rocks that are flying everywhere. Okay, fine, I'll stop dogging on the pager outfit. But I don't think the pager was gimmicky at all. The concept of different mounts was even a feature that was brought back in Legends Arceus. That being said, I think some of the Pokemon could have been used a bit more, like Machamp, which I don't know how I feel about it carrying me princess style. Maybe it could have let me piggyback or something instead, but we didn't really get to use it much except for moving some large rocks in Pony Canyon, which was a bit disappointing. It's hard for me to say since the 40 hours I spent went by in a flash, but I still think that Pokemon Sun and Moon are my second favorite games. There are just too many features in Scarlet and Violet for me to say that Sun and Moon are my favorite. I miss not being able to take pictures with my Pokemon. That's a feature I was really longing for when I was playing Sun and Moon. You can see here that this is probably the best photo I was able to capture, and it's not very great. Our Rotom Dex allows us to take pictures of Pokemon in the field, but they're just not good. I like the idea of posting the photos to get likes, which allow you to upgrade the camera. I just wish that the photos could have been of my Pokemon, or even better, of me and my Pokemon. I think that the photos would look great with this flat shading, whereas Scarlet and Violet, some of the photos can look a bit scuffed if the lighting isn't great. Obviously, they're 10 years apart, so there's going to be things that are really different between Scarvio and Sun and Moon, but I still kind of want to compare them since they're my two favorite games. I like the main story of Scarlet and Violet a lot more than Sun and Moon, but they've started to go hard on the JRPG aspect of the series. So Scarvio had a lot of detail paid to the main story of the base game and the DLC. I like the designs of the gym leaders in Scarlet and Violet, but I like them a lot more in Sun and Moon. And I think that the island challenges allowed for us to get to know the captains a lot more, which is something that was really missing in Scarvio. While I enjoyed the tasks we had to complete for the gyms in Scarvio, I really liked the challenges in Sun and Moon a lot more. I think they were much more involved and made me feel more accomplished after completing them. I liked collecting the Sunflora for Brassius's gym challenge, but I liked having to search for ingredients with Stoutland and Malo's Trial a lot more. I like the Rider Pager function in Sun and Moon, but I wish the Pokemon were actually mine and instead of ones that I'm borrowing. In Scarvio, Muradon and Corridon are working alongside us and have their own unique personalities. Obviously, they're a huge part of the story, so it makes sense that we need to feel connected to them. But if I'm spending a lot of time with my Pokemon like you do in Sun and Moon, I'd feel better if I wasn't just renting their services. Some folks will probably say, but the graphics. I'm not one of those people who cares too much about how something looks. As long as a human has put a lot of effort into it, it's pretty much good to go for me. I think both Sun and Moon and Scarlet and Violet look great. When I was playing Sun and Moon, I played using the native graphic scaling that Citra uses, and the world Pokemon and other characters looked really good. Their textures were best up in comparison though. Apparently texture mods exist for the game, so maybe if I take a look at Ultra Sun, I'll consider using something that scales them up to avoid that problem. I got around 40 hours of playtime in Sun, which didn't include completing the Pokedex or touching the battle tree. I saw around the same amount of playtime for the base game in Scarlet and Violet, which means there's no shortage of things to do in Sun and Moon. There are also little silly side quests you can complete in Sun and Moon for money, like throwing Beach Pyukumuku back into the ocean, which made talking to NPCs important. You didn't really have that in Scarlet and Violet. The NPCs were kind of lacking, but the ones in Sun and Moon had a lot to say, even if it was just a few lines. In that aspect, Sun and Moon felt like more of a traditional JRPG experience. I kind of missed the silly writing that was in Sun and Moon when I was playing Scarlet and Violet. There were some good lines in Scarvio, like when you're talking to Arven during the Urba Mystica questline, for example, but in Sun and Moon, I really like the premise of Team Skull, especially when they were willing to fight us over a bus stop. Absurd and random writing like that is just really funny to me. I liked having an evil organization that wasn't really good at what they did, but they were still trying to be evil. Absurd and random writing like that is just really funny to me. I liked having an evil organization that wasn't really good at what they did, but they were still trying to be evil. I don't know if I have any footage of it, but the Pecharunt quest in Scarvio had something similar in terms of absurdity. Pecharunt was controlling people with mochi, and they would do this really bizarre dance. Some folks may think it's stupid, but I find it really funny. I like it when things don't take themselves too seriously when they don't have to. To kind of finish this video though, I just kind of want to say that if you decide to go play through something that you haven't played in a while, you should really try your best to go into it fresh as if you haven't played it before. It really shouldn't matter what year the game was released if it's still fun. Just because Pokemon Sun and Moon were released 10 years ago doesn't mean that they need to be trapped in that point in time. I played through Sun and Moon when they came out, but throughout this entire video, I didn't really need to bring that up at all because what really mattered to me was what I thought of it now. And I really enjoyed making this video, so I think that it would be interesting to do the same thing for other older Pokemon games. I think they deserve a lot more than just being relics of the past. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to give this video a watch. I would really appreciate it if you could consider giving this video a like if you enjoyed your time with me, and maybe subscribing if you haven't already. I make all different kinds of Pokemon content, from covering fan projects to talking about new releases. There's probably something for everyone. So yeah, I hope you have an amazing day, and I can't wait to see you again next time. Okay, bye!